6 random fitness thoughts. Here's the deal. You can get the 20 that produces the 80 from simplifying, focusing on movements, and just focusing on those 6. What's going on, y'all? It is Coach Grant. Welcome back to the Kettlebell Guys podcast. Today on the podcast, I'm going to talk about 6 random fitness thoughts. And these may sound completely random, it's because they are. But the reason I wanted to do this podcast is because I was having a conversation with someone and one of these thoughts came up, and I realized that there are certain kind of thought processes around training, or like things that are true, principles around training that we believe in, that we do on an everyday basis, that are applicable to the everyday person who's either trying to, work out consistently, or who is trying to start a workout journey, trying to be healthier, all that fun stuff. So I figured it would be valuable to go through some of these random thoughts, because I think that anyone who's listening to this, who's trying to be consistent with their working out, you can get value from this. So we're going to go through 6 big random fitness thoughts, and then I might have a bonus one for y'all at the end. So let's get into it. Number 1, if you want to hack at staying consistent long-term, you have to be able to keep things simple. So what I mean by that is when I train, when I work out, and when guys in KT work out, we don't train muscle groups. So we don't think about back and bis or chest and tris or training legs. We always train full body, and we always train movement patterns. And if you hit all these, if you hit all the movement patterns, the big movement patterns, you're going to train pretty much every muscle in your body that needs to be trained. And if you stay consistent and you practice progressive overload, meaning you slowly but surely get stronger over time, the musculature, the body composition change that you're after will take care of itself. And so from my perspective, if you want to hack to be consistent, you have to keep things simple. And so here's another layer to that. When we look at training, we look at movements, and we will look at basically 6 basic movements: push, pull, hinge, squat, carry, and Turkish get up, which Turkish get up I just view as a movement that has a lot of different movements within it, an exercise that has a lot of different movements within it. And so I'm just adding that as you got to do your Turkish get ups. If you've been following us for a long enough period of time, you know that we believe in Turkish get ups. And if you haven't, and you're new to the podcast, go back to the beginning, find the episodes we've done on the Turkish get up, because that's just our thing. So big movement patterns: push, so things like push-ups, presses, push presses, etc. Pull, rows, pull-ups, different variations of rowing, pulling different things. Hinging, which would be doing kettlebell swings, 2-hand swings, 1-hand swings, cleans, snatches. Squats, which comes back to goblet squats, double front squats. You could even view squatting as like a knee dominant flexion exercise, which you would add like lunges into there, or split squats. Those would also, in my head, you can add that to keep things simple. And then you got carries, which are carrying a weight in each hand, carrying a weight in one hand, doing a racked carry, which is, having 2 bells in the front, doing an overhead carry. All the different ways that you can carry weight, you should do that as a human being. And then Turkish get-ups, which, like I said, you should just, if you don't know what Turkish get-ups are, look them up, follow me on Instagram. But you want the longevity hack, you want the fountain of youth exercise, you got to do Turkish get-ups consistently long-term. And so the reason I bring this up is that it's a hack to stay consistent long-term is by keeping things simple. And so by realizing that you don't have to do a million different things. It's super easy to make things overly complicated. I'll give you an example of this. A while ago, I posted a programming post on Instagram that said the push-pull squat. It was like the push-pull squat method, or I believe it was the 6-week push-pull squat program. And it was a simple program that took those 3 movements, a push, a pull, and a squat, and gave you the plan, a 6-week plan, where here's exactly how you can program those 3 movements. Here's the exercises that you can plug into it. And here's the way that you can train consistently 3 days a week, just doing those 3 movements. And I remember I had a ton of comments on that thread, commenting and saying, well, what about this? And what, you're missing this, and what, you should add that, and that doesn't cover this. And sure, I wouldn't disagree with you, because you could do 1,000 different things from an exercise standpoint. And, if we're talking about you need to optimize and maximize your fitness, well, then you better quit your job because you're going to need to do what Olympic athletes do or what professional athletes do, and you got to be able to work out 8+ hours a day. But here's the thing. I'm assuming that y'all listening to this, you don't have that kind of time. And what you care about is you care about optimizing and maximizing your own physical ability to be able to live the life that you want to live and do the things that you want to be able to do. Well, here's the deal. Like you can get the 20 that produces the 80 from simplifying, focusing on movements, and just focusing on those 6. Push, pull, hinge, squat, carry, and Turkish get-ups. And if you do those consistently 3 to 5 times a week, you're going to be ahead of 95% of people who want to overcomplicate things when it comes to fitness. So that's number 1. Simple hack to keep things simple. Number 2, and this is a little more tactical. Number 2, train your hinge, maintain your squat. I'll repeat that. You should want to train your hinge, which means that's like the deadlift movement. That's like the hamstring dominant movement, the hip dominant movement. You see people doing deadlifts, kettlebell swings, snatches, that's a hinge. And you want to maintain your squat. So being able to do a goblet squat, being able to get down and do a deep bodyweight squat, you want to have the ability to do it. But I can tell you this, that squatting will be much harder on your body. It wrecks your body a lot easier than doing, say, swings or heavy swings. And you compare heavy squats to heavy swings, heavy squats are much more challenging on your body and your nervous system than heavy swings are. And so that's why this principle around you should, if your goal is longevity and your goal is to be able to have the ability to move well the rest of your life, then you want to train your hinge. You can always be inching forward on getting stronger, building endurance, different qualities from a hinging perspective because your hamstrings and your hips can take it a lot easier than your knees do when you train heavy squats consistently over time. But you want to maintain your squat because it's a basic human movement. How many times do you see older people in a restaurant, in a car, having issues getting out of their chair, having issues getting out of the car seat, having issues being able to just stand up? That's from not maintaining their squat their entire lives. And so if you want that's the way you can think about when you're putting emphasis on, so the movements before, right? Push, pull, hinge, squat. Okay, so what should I put more emphasis on? What should I try to push my weights on? What should I try to get stronger with? What should I do more reps with, less reps with? You want to train your hinge, so I want to get better there. I want to continue to push the limits there. I want to maintain my squat. So I know that like I need to be able to create the movement pattern for me to be able to do squats. And then once I have it, I want to be able to maintain it at a pretty solid level. And I think for most guys, being able to goblet squat a 50 to 70 pound kettlebell, like you should be able to do that your entire life. Like you should be able to goblet squat a 70 pound bell your entire life. And if you want to go heavier than that, that's purely your goal around aesthetics with quads or ego with your squat, weights with how much you squat. Everything else is pretty ego driven, especially unless you have a very specific reason as to why, like you're an athlete and you need to be able to match up against other athletes who are squatting heavier than you, right? But most of us aren't in that position. So that's number 2, train your hinge, maintain your squat. Number 3, and this is for people who objectively want to get stronger. So this is for all of you guys and gals who are listening who know you want to build strength, which means objectively you want to go up in weights. That is a part of what you want to do when it comes to your working out. Number 3, the goal isn't always to continuously try to figure out what your 110% is from a PR perspective, going after a personal record. The goal is to pull heavier and heavier weights into your 70 to 80%. And I think that the idea around this, and I'll dive a little bit deeper into this, but the idea around this is that strength is a skill, which means you practice it. You don't just always train it. And so I'm going to give an example of the Turkish get-up as a pure exercise for an example. And I think a lot of guys who are in KT listening to this, they will understand this because they do Turkish get-ups a lot. And setting records, setting milestones and PRs in the Turkish get-up is something that we celebrate a lot inside of KT. And so we always tell guys, you don't always need to go and figure out what your 110% is. You don't always have to go and try to figure out what your PR, what's the heaviest bell you can do a Turkish get up with. You don't always have to figure that out. What you want to do is you want to continuously pull heavier weights into that 70 to 80% range, because number one, it's about a safety thing. Number two, you can't always reach for the top. You can't. And what happens with KT guys, when they come into KT, they experience getting strong really fast. So they go from like 0 to 32 kg really fast. But going to the 36, the 40, the 44, the 48 kg bell is a whole hell of a lot harder. It's exponentially harder than going from 0 to 32. But the way you go from 32 to 48, and we've done podcasts about this, I'm pretty sure my business partner and my guy, Sean, just did a podcast about this, about leveling up your Turkish get-up weights, is that you need to take your time and you need to own a certain weight to know you're ready for the next weight up. You don't go figure out if you're ready for the next weight up by trying that weight over and over and over again and doing a rep that is not very clean from a technique perspective. You know you're ready for the next weight up when you've taken your time and you've done a bell that feels like it's an 80% bell, and you use that bell over and over and over and over again until that bell eventually feels like a 70% bell, which means that you inevitably have pulled a heavier bell into the 80% range. Okay, I'm going to repeat that because it's so important to longevity when it comes to training. You want to use a bell that's like an 80% bell, and you want to just wear that bell out, whether it be for swings or for get-ups or for snatches or whatever it may be. You want to wear that bell out. You want to use it over and over and over and over again. For Turkish get-ups, it would be doing doubles, doing triples, doing quads, like getting to the point where that 80% bell slowly starts to feel like a 75, like a 70, like a 65% bell. When you do that, like you go from I did a 1-and-1, 1 rep on each side, to I do 4 in a row on each side, and I owned it. That's when I know I've taken a heavier bell, maybe a bell that's 4 kg to 8 kg heavier, and I have pulled that bell a lot closer to the 80 to 85% range, which means that I bet I could do some really solid singles with that next bell up now, right? So you always want to keep the mindset around, because you're going to be training for the rest of your life. This is a lifelong game. You are in no race. The only race that someone is in is a race against themselves. It's a race against their own ego. Like, you are in a lifelong game of a pursuit of your strongest, most bulletproof, most resilient form of you. And there is no race to get to the next weight. And so you might as well settle in until you can make the weight that you're working with feel really light, so that you know, okay, when I go to the next one, it's going to feel pretty moderate. Instead of the weight I'm working with feels heavy, I want to see what my really, really heavy is. And then when I do the really, really heavy rep, I'm like shaky. It doesn't feel good. I'm putting myself at risk for injury. And worst case scenario, you do hurt yourself, which means that you're going to start way back at square one, which means you maybe took 2 steps forward, but you're going to get injured and takes 5 steps back. And you might have to learn that lesson over and over again until it becomes real for you. But like, that's the key. This is the key to getting stronger, the key to longevity, the key to continuously leveling up to heavy bells, is not to continuously try to figure out what your heaviest bell is. All right? So that was number 3. Number 4, the what the hell effect is real. The what the hell effect is real. So in the kettlebell world, in the Strong First world, which if you don't know who Strong First is a certifying body for coaches. All of our coaches at KT have been involved with Strong First in one way, shape, or form, been certified by Strong First in one way, shape, or form. And so Strong First is like the gold standard on strength training, kettlebell training, and barbell and body weight training. And they talk about a what the hell effect, which means that you train, like I'll give you an example. Say you do bench press, right? And like say your 1 rep max on bench press is 225 pounds. And then you go and train with kettlebells for 6 weeks or for 8 weeks or for 12 weeks. And say you start doing Turkish get-ups, and like you've never done Turkish get-ups before. And you start with a 35-pound bell. And at the end of 12 weeks, you're able to do an 80-pound Turkish get-up. And you've never done bench press that entire time. And then you come back to your bench press after you train with kettlebells for 12 weeks, and your bench press, without ever benching over the course of those 3 months, your bench press goes from 225 to 250, or just goes up from wherever it was. That is what the hell effect means. Because you do that bench press rep and you're like, what the hell? Like, I haven't benched at all. And people have said over and over and over again, they see this phenomenon happening, whether it be in athletics with their endurance. They do nothing but swings. They do nothing but heavy kettlebell swings for 12 weeks. and then they go and run a 5K or a 10K or a half marathon, and their time gets better. Their running time gets better with barely even running over the course of those 12 weeks. That's because your body literally got stronger. Your heart rate and your endurance and your cardiovascular effect improved just by you doing swings rather than you going and pounding the pavement over and over and over again. And so someone could be like, go and run a much shorter time. And it's another example of the what the hell effect. Or guys have talked about it, or people have talked about it when it comes to athletics, in terms of their sport or in terms of golf. A lot of times guys they level up with bells, swings and get-ups. They will start hitting their drives 10, 20, 30 yards farther. That's another example of the what the hell effect. And so it's these real life scenarios, these real life examples of things getting better when you simplify and you train and you get stronger and you focus on your technique and you focus on getting better with the basics of the foundations of kettlebell training. Well, everything else can exponentially get better and everything else is influenced, even if you are not specifically trying to work on that specific thing. That is the what the hell effect, and it is very real. All right? Now, number five of 6, you should care less about the clock when you are training. So what I mean is you should care less about the work to rest ratio. A lot of times guys want to be like, well, how much we work and how much we resting? Or like, we need to make sure we're resting for 30 seconds or, we should go on the minute or we should go on the 30 seconds. Or I need to make sure that I do this work in this period of time. There's a whole industry in the fitness industry around this. It's called high intensity interval training, right? There's this whole big thought process become a craze of people needing to work on the clock because that is the way that you're going to maximize your cardio or whatever within that period of time. Now, here's my thought on it. Number one, if you need it for timing, like if you need it for your ability to like, I need to get this workout done in 30 minutes, which means that if I do this stuff on a certain timing period, then I'm going to be done in 30 minutes, which means I can get on with my day. That's fine. I get that. I understand that. If you find yourself obsessing over work to rest ratios or working on a clock because you feel like you're trying to get more out of your workout, like I'm going to be better for it from a body composition change, fat burning, whatever you call that, or whatever you are placing it towards, the emphasis on. My opinion is, there's so many things that you could focus on before you have to worry about working on the clock. Things like your technique, things like your bells that you're working with, your strength level, your consistency, your ability to just train consistently every week, week in and week out for a year, for 2 years, for 3 years, like not missing, like not going months without training. I'll come back to it. Your technique, because all of us can get better when it comes to technique. Every single session is an opportunity to get better from a technique perspective. And a lot of times if you're on the clock, you're focused a whole hell of a lot less on your technique and you're focused more on the clock and you're focused more on, well, okay, the clock is telling me I need to go, so I need to go, regardless of how it feels or regardless of what my technique looks like. And the biggest thing around why I say your technique, your strength, your consistency needs to come before that is because once you get, and this is going to sound long to you guys, but once you get 2 years in, 3 years in, 4 years in, 5 years in, like for me personally, I've maybe looked at the clock less than 10% of the training time that I've done the last 10 years. And I train 4 to 5 days a week, every week. And I've looked at the clock less than 10% of the amount of the time. And so that means that you have all this time, you have 5+ years of just focusing on getting stronger, getting your technique dialed in before you need to worry about the clock. Because number one, your physical results are made in the kitchen and they're made in your ability to be consistent, train nonstop, and your ability to continue to get stronger. But number two, you know that you've earned the right to look at the clock once you get to the point where you like using heavier bells is pretty normal to you. Where like using 70, 80, 100-pound kettlebells, once you've got that in the bag and you feel like you can use those bells without worrying about your technique, like you don't have to second guess your technique at all and your body always feels good from training, then you can start being like, okay, why don't we go on the minute? Why don't I challenge myself from a work to rest? Why don't I be more specific when it comes to my endurance? And I think that like most of these, they would probably have some pushback from people. And that's okay. Because like to me, it's just that there's just so many other things that you can get better at and you can level up with first before you got to worry about being on the clock. Because I think most of the outcomes that people are after, losing weight, losing body fat, getting stronger, feeling better, all of that can be achieved without ever looking at the clock, without ever worrying about your work to rest ratio. All of that can be achieved. So caring less about the clock from my perspective, dude, do a set of however many reps, walk around, shake it off, go when you're ready. In the beginning of your workout, it might be shorter. At the end of your workout, it might be longer. That's okay. It never has to be the same. You're still going to get, that's the 20 that's going to produce the 80. All right? So that's number 5. Now, number 6, this kind of goes with you don't have to train on the clock, is that training isn't meant to constantly tear you down. You should feel good most of the time, because here's the deal. You need to feel like you can come back and do it again tomorrow and do it again 3 more times this week. And then you need to feel like you can come back and do that again next week and the week after that for 6 months, for 12 months, for 2 years, for 5 years, for the rest of your life. You have to always feel like you can come back and do the work that you needed to do today. You got to be able to feel like you can come back and do it again tomorrow or the next day. And if you don't feel like that, if you just feel like you are constantly tearing yourself down, if you just feel like you are constantly sore, there's a difference between being a good sore and a constantly sore where it's demotivating. If you are constantly feeling torn down, your nervous system is wrecked, you have low energy, you don't feel like you're catching up on sleep, you always wake up tired and groggy. If that's the case, you're not going to stick with it long term. It's not going to happen. And that's the biggest issue that most people run into anyways. They don't stay consistent long term. They don't continue to do this stuff for the rest of their life. And so if you're doing something from a training perspective, it is not to say that you shouldn't challenge yourself. It is not to say that you shouldn't have some sessions over the course of a year where you feel crushed, where you laid it all out on the line, where you challenged yourself, where you forced your body to adapt. You should have that. But 90% of the time, 95% of the time, you should feel good. You should end the session and be like, I could keep going if I wanted to. But I'm going to bank that. I'm going to be like, okay, I could keep going if I wanted to, but guess what? I got to come back tomorrow, or I got to come back on Wednesday and do this again. And so I'm going to bank that. I'm going to save that energy. I'm going to save that good feeling. I'm going to save it and I'll put it towards the workout that I have coming up. Partner Sean talks a lot about banking motivation. Like if you feel good, great, bank it. Because you're going to have a session coming up in a day, in a week, in a month where you don't feel good and you don't have any motivation to want to train. And you need to bank that motivation and save it for when you need to pull it out next time. There's no need to crush yourself today because you feel great. And then you'll wake up tomorrow and being like, oh God, I'm dreading my workout because I feel so crushed. All right. So just to recap, number 1, if you want a hack at staying consistent long-term, you need to keep it simple. We keep it simple by focusing on movements: push, pull, hinge, squat, carry, Turkish get up. Number 2, train your hinge, maintain your squat. You can do heavy swings the rest of your life. I got guys in their 60s and 70s who can do 70, 80, 100-pound swings. Maintain your squat. Maintain it the rest of your life. Number 3, goal isn't always to figure out what your PR is, what your personal record at 110% is, what your heaviest bell you can use is. The goal is to pull heavier and heavier weights into your 70 to 80% range. Make that range stronger and the heavier bells will come. Bonus on that one, strength is a skill. You practice it. You practice it, you don't just train it. Number 4, the what the hell effect is real. You train with bells, you will find things in your life that you will feel better at, that you'll have more energy for, that you will just do better, and you will think to yourself, what the hell? Because that effect is real. Number 5, care less about the clock. Focus less on work to rest ratio. There's things that can come before that from improving your technique, your strength, your consistency over time, that you can focus on. The work to rest ratio is the last thing you should focus on. Like you can give yourself the grace to be like, I don't have to focus on that because I'm just going to focus on showing up and being consistent. When you're ready, hit your next set. And your work to rest ratio periods might be different every single set, and that's okay. And number 6, training is not meant to just constantly tear you down. You should feel good most of the time. You should feel like you can come back and do it again. Like you have more energy. A lot of times our guys in KT will be like, I had more energy at the end of that session than I had at the beginning. Well, great. Save it and bring it towards your next workout and continuously stack good weeks together, because if you constantly tear yourself down, it's going to be really hard to be consistent long term. And I have a bonus. Number 7 for y'all. Bonus. And this isn't really a training. This is more so for guys who are starting to train or who are making the decision to be working out consistently. But here's your bonus. Don't be afraid to set a new standard. And I might do a full podcast on this someday, but you cannot be afraid to set a new standard when it comes to your workouts, when it comes to your nutrition, when it comes to your lifestyle habits. Some of y'all might be in a position where everyone around you doesn't live the lifestyle that you want to live. Your wife doesn't live it. Your partner doesn't live it. Your kids aren't active. Your friends aren't active. Your coworkers aren't active. Who knows what it is? Maybe it's some of those, maybe it's all of those. But you have this desire, you have this version of you that you see out in the distance, that you want to be better, that you believe there could be different standards for what you do consistently. And you might feel a natural resistance to that because so many people don't live the lifestyle that you want to live. And so you would be swimming upstream against everyone else. Don't be afraid to set a new standard. Don't be afraid to only care. Well, I just didn't say only care. Don't be afraid to care most about what you think about yourself versus what anybody else thinks about yourself, about you. Don't be afraid to set a new example. Because guess what? If you have the courage to do it, it might just be the thing that gives other people the permission to do it as well. It might be the thing that changes your entire bloodline when it comes to health. That's why we talk about generational health all the time. And so you cannot be afraid to set that new standard. And I promise you, usually only good things come from when guys have the courage to do that. So that's your bonus. Don't be afraid to set a new standard. And so those are random training thoughts. If you work out consistently, if you're just starting to get into a routine of working out, I hope you got something valuable from this. Especially if you're trying to train with kettlebells, these are thoughts that I talk about all the time with friends, with guys who are interested in KT, with our clients who are in KT. These are things that we talk about all the time when it comes to training, and it comes to being consistent, and it comes to the hacks and the ways that you have to view this stuff in order to do it over the course of 10, 20, 30 years, which I think for most people is the ultimate goal. So with that being said, that's what I'm going to leave you with today. I appreciate, if you got all the way to the end, I appreciate you listening. I appreciate your attention. I think time and attention is the number one thing that we give. And so I appreciate having some of yours today. And if you want to learn more about KT, go to our website, kettlebelltransformation.com. And you can also check us out on Instagram at Kettlebell Grant, at Kettlebell Sean. All of our coaches are on there as well. Go to our at Kettlebell Transformation Instagram. You'll see all of our coaches, all of our team, the rockstar team that we have. We are growing, and we are growing fast. And it's a very exciting time at Kettlebell Transformation right now. So with that being said, I hope you all have a very strong week, and I'll see you on the next pod. Bye.